welcome to the show. Still taking place in this white antiseptic room filled with one increasingly weak adult. It's like a hospital, only sadder. It's been a week of continued Black Lives Matter protests across the country, which have managed to generate far-reaching effects, both big and small. For instance, Cops was cancelled after 33 years of being that show your dad falls asleep to, and Sesame Street and CNN held a town hall to explain the current moment to children, which didn't please all kids. In fact, just wait for one giant baby's reaction.
Across the country, people of color, especially in the black community, are being treated unfairly because of how they look.
It's a children's show. Got that, Bobby? America is a very bad place, and it's your fault. So no matter what happens, no matter what they do to you when you grow up, you have no right to complain.
First, obviously, fuck off, Tucker, you one-man homeowners association. And second, that unspecified they in what they do to you when you grow up is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. There's basically two options for what that could mean. One, that Tucker and his viewers have benefited from a racist system that renders any specifications of who they are unnecessary. Or two, that his show is a badly written piece of garbage. So, which is it, Tucker? Are you a racist or are you a total fucking moron? The answer can be, and indeed is, both. But the momentum wasn't just confined to television. The Minneapolis City Council has pledged to dismantle that city's police force, while New York lawmakers voted to make police disciplinary records public and passed a law criminalising the use of chokeholds by police, both of which seem like common sense and the bare minimum, and yet police union leaders have continued to freak out.
Stop treating us like animals and thugs, and start treating us with some respect. That's what we're here today to say. We've been left out of the conversation. We've been vilified. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yeah, you have been left out of the conversation, but I'll tell you why. It's because you've been fucking terrible at conversing. If a high school debate team argued their rebuttals by tear-gassing the other team, they probably wouldn't be invited back to regionals. Now, meanwhile, some have taken dismantling symbols of white supremacy into their own hands. Statues across the world are being torn down. A slave trader in Bristol, England was hurled into the harbour. King Leopold II in Belgium was spray-painted and ultimately removed. And statues of Christopher Columbus have been toppled, beheaded, and in one case, thrown into a lake where, and this is true, its location was quickly updated on Google Maps because, unlike Christopher Columbus himself, Google knows how to read a fucking map. And these protests have given momentum to official campaigns, like Virginia's effort to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee, an effort that some, like this state senator, have been troubled by.
It's all about shoving this down people's throats and erasing the history of the white people. And I think that's wrong.
Wow. I mean, setting aside her almost clinical ability to miss the point, you cannot erase the history of white people. It's like the skid marks on the arse of your favourite shorts. No matter how hard you try, that shit's never coming out. And statues aren't the only tributes to a horrifying past now being reconsidered. NASCAR banned the Confederate flag, which prompted one part-time driver to announce he's quitting after this season, although, to be fair, that driver had never won a race, so you can kind of understand why a flag for losers might have been important to him. And the country group Lady Antebellum changed their name to just Lady A, which is a solid fix as long as nobody ever asks what the A stands for or points out that that name's been used by a black blues singer for the last 20 years. And then there was this.
Gone with the Wind is gone from HBO. It's one of the most popular films of all time, but it's also been condemned for ignoring the horrors of slavery. Today, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany tore into HBO, making it clear she was speaking on behalf of the president.
Where do you draw the line here? I'm told that no longer can you find on HBO Gone with the Wind because somehow that is now offensive. Where do you draw the line? Should George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison be erased from history?
Okay, first, as I've said before, the answer to where do you draw the line is literally always somewhere. You draw it somewhere. Also, HBO is not permanently pulling the movie, it's going back up with additional context. And finally, who gives a shit if something's not on HBO Max In fact, there may be no better way to obliterate all evidence of something's existence than to put it on HBO Max, the only ash heap of history that costs $15 a month. And look, obviously, symbolic progress is progress, and a lot of these changes have been a long time coming. But this week also brought stubborn reminders of the institutional inertia that is going to make real change so difficult, like Joe Biden sticking by his plan to invest an additional $300 million into community policing efforts, which is an example of whatever the precise opposite of reading the room is. And also, we saw yet more footage of police handcuffing black teens for jaywalking, as well as a newly released video of Oklahoma officers responding to a man saying, "I can't breathe," by saying, "I don't care." That man, incidentally, Derek Scott, would go on to die at the hospital of a collapsed lung. And perhaps most infuriatingly of all, as protesters continue to demand justice for Breonna Taylor, who was killed in her own home by police executing a no-knock warrant, the Louisville Police Department responded with this.
Police in Louisville are releasing the incident report from the night officers shot and killed Breonna Taylor. As the Courier-Journal reports, it's almost entirely blank. The 4-page report says Taylor had no injuries, even though police shot her at least 8 times.
Holy shit, that is appalling. And when it comes to erasing history, this seems a fuck of a lot worse than leaving a bunch of statues toppled, cracked and beheaded, or, as that would probably be described on a Louisville police report, no injuries. So yes, it's important that we deal honestly with the uncomfortable aspects of our past, but there's also hard, necessary work to be done in changing the unacceptable conditions of our present. And the only hope for that is if, to say something that has never once been said about the offerings on HBO Max, people don't take their fucking eyes off this. And now, this.
And now, C-SPAN callers have some thoughts on the coronavirus for the second most patient man on television.
I only have one question. I wanted to know who was the last politician or ex-politician to visit China before this virus?
And why it matters?
I'm curious.
Okay.
I've seen a guy walking down through a grocery store with a jockey strap on his face.
I practiced physical distancing long before anybody tried to tell me I had to, because I don't like people.
Sam is in Seattle, Washington. Sam, go ahead.
So, how you doing?
Fine, thanks. Go ahead.
What do you want to ask me?
Richard in Maryland. Hello.
Hi, I would just like to thank you for taking my call, number one. Number two, you should go fuck yourself.
Who the hell is he? He's nobody. He's just a man from Brooklyn, Vachi. Who cares about what he thinks?
He's the lead epidemiologist on the White House task force team.
Get easy. We got somebody at the door. Who's that?
Okay.
But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Stay safe and Baba Booey.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns facial recognition, the thing that makes sure my iPhone won't open unless it sees my face or the face of any toucan. But that is it. Facial recognition technology has been showcased in TV shows and movies for years. Denzel Washington even discovered a creative use for it in the 2006 action movie Deja Vu.
We have facial recognition software?
Yeah.
Let's use it on the bag, cross-match it to all the bags on the south side of the city in the 48 hours leading up to the explosion, all right?
Don't think it's ever been used this way.
Look, same thing.
Bingo.
Bingo indeed, Denzel. With smart, believable plot development like that, it's frankly no wonder that Deja Vu received such glowing IMDb reviews as an insult to anybody who finished elementary school, worst movie of all time, more like Deja Poo, and my personal favourite, a 1-star review that reads, Bruce Greenwood, as always, is great and so sexy, and there's a cat who survives. A review that was clearly written either by Bruce Greenwood or that cat. Now, the technology behind facial recognition has been around for years, but recently, as it's grown more sophisticated, its applications have expanded greatly. For instance, it's no longer just humans who can be the targets.
The iPhone sensor scans each fish and uses automatic image processing to uniquely identify each individual. A number of symptoms are recognized, including loser fish.
Yes, loser fish, which by the way is an actual industry term. Now, that company says it can detect which fish are losers by facial scan, which is important because can you tell which one of these fish is a loser and which one is a winner? Are you sure about that? Because they're the same fish. This is why you need a computer. But the growth of facial recognition and what it's capable of brings with it a host of privacy and civil liberties issues. Because if you want a sense of just how terrifying this technology could be if it becomes part of everyday life, just watch as a Russian TV presenter demonstrates an app called Find Face.
If you find yourself in a cafe with an attractive girl and you don't have the guts to approach her, no problem. All you need is a smartphone and the application Find Face. Find new friends, take a picture, and wait for the result. Now you're already looking at her profile page.
Burn it all down. Burn everything down. I realise that this is a sentence that no one involved in creating that app ever once thought, but just imagine that from a woman's perspective. You're going about your day when suddenly you get a random message from a guy you don't know that says, "Hello, I saw you in cafe earlier and used Find Face app to learn your name and contact information. I'll pick you up from your place at 8. Don't worry, I already know where you live." But one of the biggest users of facial recognition is, perhaps unsurprisingly, law enforcement. Since 2011, the FBI has logged more than 390,000 facial recognition searches. And the databases law enforcement are pulling from include over 117 million American adults and incorporate, among other things, driver's license photos from residents of all these states. So roughly 1 in 2 of us have had our photos searched this way. And the police will argue that this is all for the best. In fact, here is an official with the London police explaining why they use it there.
Here in London, we've had the London Bridge attack, the Westminster Bridge attack. The suspects involved in that, the people who are guilty of those offences, were often known by the authorities. Had they been on some database, had they been picked up by cameras beforehand, we may have been able to prevent those atrocities, and that would definitely be a price worth paying.
Okay, look, it's hard to come out against the prevention of atrocities. This show is, and always has been, anti-atrocity. But the key question there is, what's the trade-off? If the police could guarantee that they can prevent all robberies, but the only way to do that is by having an officer stationed in every bathroom watching you every time you take a shit, I'm not sure everyone would agree that it's worth it, and the people who do might want that for reasons other than preventing crime. And now is actually a very good time to be looking at this issue because there are currently serious concerns that facial recognition is being used to identify Black Lives Matter protesters. And if that's true, it wouldn't actually be the first time, as this senior scientist at Google, Timnit Gebru, will tell you.
There was an example with the Baltimore police in the Freddie Gray marches, where they used face recognition to identify protesters. And then they try to link them up with their social media profiles and then target them for arrest. So right now, a lot of people are actually urging people not to put images of protesters on social media because there are people out there whose job is just to look up these people and target them.
It's true. During the Freddie Gray protests, police officers used facial recognition technology to look for people with outstanding warrants and arrest them, which is a pretty sinister way to undermine the right to assemble. So tonight, let's take a look at facial recognition. Let's start with the fact that even as big companies like Microsoft, Amazon and IBM have been developing it, and governments all over the world have been happily rolling it out, there haven't been many rules or a framework in place for how it is used. In Britain, they've actually been experimenting with facial recognition zones, even putting up signs alerting you to the fact that you're about to enter one, which seems polite, but watch what happens when one man decided he didn't actually want his face scanned.
This man didn't want to be caught by the police cameras, so he covered his face. Police stopped him, they photographed him anyway, an argument followed.
What's your suspicion?
The fact that he walked past clearly marked.
I would do the same. I would do the same.
So I walked past like that. It's a cold day as well. As I've done that, the police officers asked me to come to him, so I've got me back up. I said to him, off. I've got a now £90 fine. There you go. Look at that. Thanks, lads. £90. Well done.
Yeah, that Guy Ritchie character was rightly mad about that. And incidentally, if you are not British and you're looking at that man, then at me, and wondering how we both came from the same island, let me quickly explain. British people come in 2 variations. So emotionally stunted that they're practically comatose, and cheerfully telling large groups of policemen to fuck off and do one if you're going to take a photo of me face. There's absolutely nothing in between the two. And the UK is by no means alone in building out a system. Australia is investing heavily in a national facial biometric system called The Capability, which sounds like the name of a Netflix original movie, although that's actually perfect if you want people to notice it, think, oh, that seems interesting, and then forget it ever existed. And you don't have to imagine what this technology would look like in the hands of an authoritarian government, because China is unsurprisingly embracing it in a big way.
We can match every face with an ID card and trace all your movements back 1 week in time. We can match your face with your car, match you with your relatives, and the people you're in touch with. With enough cameras, we can know who you frequently meet.
That is a terrifying level of surveillance. Imagine the Eye of Sauron, but instead of scouring Middle-earth for the One Ring, he was just really into knowing where all his orcs like to go to dinner. And some state-funded developers in China seem weirdly oblivious to just how sinister their projects sound.
Skynet, what is that?
The Terminator is the favorite film of our founder. So they use the same name, but they want to put something good into this system.
So, okay, in the Terminator, Skynet is evil, rains down death from the sky. But in China, Skynet is good.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Oh, that's the difference, is it? You know, it's not exactly reassuring that you called your massive, all-encompassing AI network Skynet, but a good version, because it would be like if the Today Show built a robot journalist and called it Matt Lauer, but good. Oh yeah, this one's completely different. Sure, he does also have a button under his office desk, but all it does is release lilac air freshener. This is the good version. The point is, this technology raises troubling philosophical questions about personal freedom, and right now, there are also some very immediate practical issues, because even though it is currently being used, this technology is still very much a work in progress, and its error rate is particularly high when it comes to matching faces in real time. In fact, in the UK, when human rights researchers watched police put one such system to the test, they found that only 8 out of 42 matches were verifiably correct. And that's even before we get into the fact that these systems can have some worrying blind spots, as one MIT researcher found out when testing out numerous algorithms, including Amazon's own recognition system.
At first glance, MIT researcher Joy Buolamwini says the overall accuracy rate was high, even though all companies better detected and identified men's faces than women's. But the error rate grew as she dug deeper.
Lighter male faces were the easiest to guess the gender on, and darker female faces were the hardest.
One system couldn't even detect if she had a face, and the others misidentified her gender. White guy, no problem.
Yeah, white guy, no problem, which, yes, is the unofficial motto of history. But it's not like what we needed right now was for computers to somehow find a way to exacerbate the problem. And it gets worse. In one test, Amazon's system even failed on the face of Oprah Winfrey, someone so recognizable, her magazine only had to type the first letter of her name and your brain auto-completed the rest. And that's not all. A federal study of more than 100 facial recognition algorithms found that Asian and African American people were up to 100 times more likely to be misidentified than white men. So that is clearly concerning. And on top of all of this, some law enforcement agencies have been using these systems in ways they weren't exactly designed to be used.
In 2017, police were looking for this beer thief. The surveillance image wasn't clear enough for facial recognition software to identify him. So instead, police used a picture of a lookalike, which happened to be actor Woody Harrelson. That produced names of several possible suspects and led to an arrest.
Yeah, they used a photo of Woody Harrelson to catch a beer thief. And how dare you drag Woody Harrelson into this? This is the man that once got drunk at Wimbledon in this magnificent hat, made this facial expression in the stands, and in doing so, accidentally made tennis interesting for a day. He doesn't deserve prison for that. He deserves the Wimbledon trophy. And there have been multiple instances where investigators have had such confidence in a match, they've made disastrous mistakes. A few years back, Sri Lankan authorities mistakenly targeted this Brown University student as a suspect in a heinous crime, which made for a pretty awful finals week.
On the morning of April 25th, in the midst of finals season, I woke up in my dorm room to 35 missed calls, all frantically informing me that I had been falsely identified as one of the terrorists involved in the recent Easter attacks in my beloved motherland, Sri Lanka.
That's terrible. Finals week is already bad enough, what with staying up all night, alternating shots of 5-hour energy and Java Monster Mean Bean while trying to push your brain to remember the differences between Baroque and Rococo architecture without waking up to find out that you've also been accused of terrorism because a computer sucks at faces. Now, on the one hand, these technical issues could get smoothed out over time, but even if this technology eventually becomes perfect, we should really be asking ourselves how much we're comfortable with it being used by police, by governments, by companies, or indeed by anyone. And we should be asking that right now because we're about to cross a major line. For years, many tech companies approached facial recognition with caution. In fact, in 2011, the then chairman of Google said it was the one technology the company had held back because it could be used in a very bad way. And think about that. It was too Pandora's boxy for Silicon Valley, the world's most enthusiastic Pandora's box openers. And even some of the big companies that have developed facial recognition algorithms have designed it for use on limited data sets like mugshots or driver's license photos. But now something important has changed, and it is because of this guy, Hoan Ton-That, and his company Clearview AI. And I'll let him describe what it does.
Quite simply, Clearview is basically a search engine for faces. So anyone in law enforcement can upload a face to the system and it finds any other publicly available material that matches that particular face.
Okay, so the key phrase there is publicly available material, because Clearview says it's collected a database of 3 billion images. That is larger than any other facial recognition database in the world. And it's done that by scraping them from public-facing social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. So, for instance, Clearview's system would theoretically include this publicly available photo of Ton-That at what appears to be Burning Man, or this one of him wearing a suit from the exclusive Santa Claus After Dark collection at Men's Warehouse, and this very real photo of him shirtless and lighting a cigarette with blood-covered hands, which, by the way, is his profile photo on Tidal, because yes, of course, he's also a musician. I can only assume that that's the cover of an album called Automatic Skip if this ever comes up on a Pandora station. And Ton-Tat's willingness to do what others have not been willing to do, and that is scrape the whole internet for photos, has made his company a genuine game changer in the worst possible way. Just watch as he impresses a journalist by running a sample search.
So here's the photo you uploaded to me. A headshot from CNN. So first few images it's found a few different versions of that same picture. But now as we scroll down, we're starting to see pictures of me that are not from that original image. Oh, go to, wow, oh my God. So this photograph is from my local newspaper where I lived in Ireland. And this photo would have been taken when I was like 16.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Although, here is some advice. If there is an embarrassing photo of you from when you were a teenager, don't run away from it. Make it the centre of your television show's promotional campaign and own it. Use the fact that your teenage years were a hormonal Stalingrad. Harness the pain. But the notion that someone can take your picture and immediately find out everything about you is alarming enough, even before you discover that over 600 law enforcement agencies have been using Clearview's service. And you're probably in that database, even if you don't know it. If a photo of you has been uploaded to the internet, there is a decent chance that Clearview has it, even if someone uploaded it without your consent, even if you untagged yourself or later set your account to private. And if you're thinking, hold on, isn't this against the terms of service for internet companies? You should know Clearview actually received cease and desist orders from Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook earlier this year, but it has refused to stop, arguing that it has a First Amendment right to harvest data from social media, which is just not at all how the First Amendment works. You might as well argue that you have an Eighth Amendment right to dress up rabbits like John Lennon. That amendment does not cover what I think you think it does. And yet, Ton-That insists that this was all inevitable, so we should all frankly be glad that he's the one who did it.
I think the choice now is not between like no facial recognition and facial recognition. It's between, bad facial recognition and responsible facial recognition. And we want to be in the responsible category.
Well, sure, you want to be, but are you? Because there are a lot of red flags here. For starters, apps he developed before this included one called Trump Hair, which would just add Trump's hair to a user's photo, and another called Vidiho that phished its own users, tricking them into sharing access to their Gmail account and then spanning all their contacts. So I'm not sure that I would want to trust my privacy to this guy. If, however, I was looking for someone to build an app that let me put Ron Swanson's mustache on my face as my checking account was quietly drained, sure, then he'd be the top of my list. And despite Clearview's repeated reassurances that its product is intended only for law enforcement, as if that is inherently a good thing, he's already put it in a lot of other people's hands, because in addition to users like the DEA and the FBI, he's also made it available to employees at Kohl's, Walmart and Macy's, which has alone completed more than 6,000 facial searches. And it gets worse, because they've also reportedly tried to pitch their service to congressional candidate and white supremacist Paul Nealon, suggesting that they could help him use unconventional databases for extreme opposition research, which is a terrifying series of words to share a sentence with white supremacist. Now, Clearview says that that offer was unauthorized, but when questioned about who else he might be willing to work with, Tontat's answer hasn't been reassuring.
There's some countries that would never sell to that are very adverse to the U.S. For example? Like China and Russia, Iran, North Korea. So those are the things that are definitely off the table.
What about countries that think that being gay should be illegal, it's a crime?
So like I said, you know, we want to make sure that we do everything correctly, mainly focus on the U.S. and Canada. And the interest has been overwhelming, to be honest. Just so much interest that, you know, we're taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, that's not terribly comforting. When you ask a farmer if he'd let foxes into the hen house, the answer you hope for is no, not the interest from foxes has been overwhelming, to be honest. Just so much interest. So, you know, we're taking it one day at a time. And unsurprisingly, reporters for BuzzFeed have found that Clearview has quietly offered its services to entities in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, countries that view human rights laws with the same level of respect that Clearview seems to have for Facebook's terms of service. So facial recognition technology is already here. The question is, what can we do about it? Well, some are trying to find ways to thwart the cameras themselves.
Hi guys, it's me Jillian again with a new makeup tutorial. Today's topic is how to hide from cameras.
Okay, first, that's probably not a scalable solution, and second, I'm not sure if that makes you less identifiable or the most identifiable person on Earth. Officers are on the lookout for a young woman, dark hair, medium build, looks like a mime who went through a shredder. Look, clearly, what we really need to do is put limits on how this technology can be used, and some locations have laws in place already. San Francisco banned facial recognition last year, but the scope of that is limited to city law enforcement. It doesn't affect state and federal use or private companies. Meanwhile, Illinois has a law requiring companies to obtain written permission before collecting a person's fingerprints, facial scans, or other identifying biological characteristics, and that is good. But we also need a comprehensive nationwide policy, and we need it right now, because again, there are worries that it is being used in the protests that we are seeing now. And the good news is that just this week, thanks to those protests and to years of work by activists, some companies did pull back from facial recognition. For instance, IBM says they'll no longer develop facial recognition. Meanwhile, Amazon said it was putting a 1-year hold on working with law enforcement. And Microsoft said it wouldn't sell its technology to police without federal regulation. But there is nothing to stop those companies from changing their mind if people's outrage dies down. And for the record, while Clearview says it's cancelling its private contracts, it's also said it will keep working with the police, just as it will keep harvesting your photos from the internet. So if Clearview is going to keep grabbing our photos, at the very least, there may be a way to let them know what you think about that. So the next time you feel the need to upload a photo, maybe throw in an extra one for them to collect. Maybe hold up a sign that says, these photos were taken unwillingly and I'd rather you not be looking at them. Or if that feels too complicated, just fuck Clearview. That really does get the message across. And remember, these photos are often being searched by law enforcement, so you may want to take this opportunity to talk to the investigators looking through your photos. Maybe something like, I don't look like Woody Harrelson, but while I have your attention, defund the police. Really, whatever you feel is most important to tell them, you should put on a sign. That's our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night.